There's something that most first-time CEOs experience that almost nobody talks about openly. You built something real, the business is growing, the team is in place. From the outside, everything looks like it's working. But inside, you're carrying a version of this role that nobody prepared you for. You're making decisions you've never made before. You're leading at a scale you've never led at before. And you're navigating pressure that doesn't come with an instruction manual. And you're doing most of it alone. Not because you don't have people around you, but because there's a gap between the role the business now needs you to play and the version of yourself that you're currently operating from. And you can't really show that gap to your team. You can't show it to your investors. You can't show it to the people who are counting on you to have it all together. So you carry it and you push through. And the worst part is you tell yourself that it'll settle down once this quarter is over, once that new hire gets started, once you get through this particular stretch. But the reality is it doesn't settle. It just becomes the baseline. And if any part of that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm going to share with you is the thing that has changed the trajectory for every CEO that I've worked with. My name is Byron Morrison, and I help first-time CEOs in 18 different countries. And what I'm going to show you in this video is something that most leadership content never addresses. Now, I want to start by telling you what this video is not. This is not a training. I'm not going to be giving you 5 steps to manage your time better or a framework for delegation that you can implement this week. You've probably already read the books, you know the frameworks, and if they were going to work, they would have already helped you fix the problem. What I want to do instead is show you what's actually happening, why nothing in the past you've tried has fully worked, and what the CEOs who get out of this pattern do differently. Let me describe your week, and you tell me if this sounds right. You go into Monday with a plan of what you want to move forward. Before long, though, you get pulled into fires and problems you shouldn't even be in. Your team keeps coming to you with decisions that they should handle, and an issue comes up, and once again, you get dragged into it as it's quicker and easier to fix it yourself. So instead of moving forward your vision or plans for growth, you spend your day reacting and dealing with what's important right now instead of what's important long term. And as a result, Friday comes, and despite working 60 plus hours, you don't actually know what you move forward. And when you finally get a second to think, you realize that the one thing that you said you were going to move forward this week still hasn't got any progress. And to make matters worse, you don't really know where you should be spending your time or what you should be focusing on at this level. After all, you've never done this before, so you spend your days working on the things that you think you should be doing, even if they don't actually need to be done by a CEO. And with all the pressure to deliver, you have times where you overthink, you avoid tough, uncomfortable conversations, you second guess yourself, and you feel like you're winging it and making it up as you go. And then there's a version of this that doesn't show up in the business metrics. The Sunday anxiety where you feel behind before the week even begins. The drive home where you're replaying a conversation that happened 3 hours ago. The dinner where you're physically there, but you're mentally still on the thing that you haven't finished. And for some, it shows up in distance at home. For others, their health that keeps taking a back seat. And for a lot of CEOs, it's that quiet realization that they don't actually feel in control anymore. And for so many of the CEOs I speak to, all of this fuels the moments where you wonder privately, not in a way you'd ever say out loud, whether you're actually the right person for the role that you're in, whether you're really doing this right, whether someone in your team or your board is starting to notice the gap between how in control you look and how in control you actually feel. Or worse, you're quietly terrified that someone is about to figure out that you're making up more of this as you go than anyone realizes. I hear some version of this from almost every CEO I speak to, like Cole, who had built a high growth unicorn in Silicon Valley. In his testimonial video, he said that the CEO role is something that has to be earned and learned, especially if you've never done it before. And what he found is that even though he was surrounded by investors and mentors and experienced advisors, nobody was in his corner specifically for him, for his growth, for his development, for the gap between who he was and who the business needed him to become. Or Gabe, who built a nine-figure company, and he described it differently. He said he felt very much like an imposter, that he had no idea what he was doing, that he felt unconfident and insecure about being the actual leader his company needed. But he felt like he didn't deserve to say that out loud. These are two very different businesses in two very different industries, and they were carrying the exact same private experience. Because this isn't an industry problem, and it's not a business model problem either. Instead, it's a pattern that shows up in almost every first-time CEO who is running a company that's grown past what the version of them that built it can comfortably lead. And what I found after dealing with hundreds of CEOs is the reason nothing you've tried has fully worked isn't that you haven't found the right system or made the right hire or read the right book. It's that you're trying to solve an identity level and structural problem with tactical solutions. You're trying to get out of the weeds by delegating more tasks, but the business keeps routing decisions back through you because the structure around you is built for you to be the center of it. Or you're trying to manage your time better, but you end the week in the same position because you're not clear on where you should be spending your time or defending the things that only you can do. Or you're trying to think your way into the CEO you need to become, but the identity that you're operating from, the one that built the company by being involved in everything, by being the one who fixes it, by being the one who carries it, that identity doesn't just update because you decide that it should. Because the version of you that built this company was exactly right for that stage. The hustle, the hands-on involvement, the fact that you were across everything, that's what got you here. But what fueled the growth then is bottlenecking it now. The speed that once created momentum now creates dependency. And the involvement that once drove execution now prevents your team from owning it. The identity that built the business is the exact identity that's now getting in the way of scaling it. The gap between who you are and who the business now needs you to be doesn't close through effort or working harder. It closes through a specific kind of external support that helps you see what you can't see from inside it. And here's the part that matters most. This doesn't fix itself. The pattern doesn't ease when the quarter settles. It doesn't resolve with the next hire. It embeds. The structure hardens. The team conditions itself around you being the center. And every month in the structure makes the change heavier, not lighter. And the CEOs who wait the longest to address it all say the same thing afterwards. Not that it was hard to change, but that they waited far longer than they needed to. And the cost of that waiting isn't always visible in the numbers. It's in the growth that slows because the business can only move as fast as you can respond. It's in the strategic work that keeps getting displaced by operational noise. It's in the team that gets more conditioned every month to root through you rather than owning what they need to own. It's in the relationships that run on fumes because the version of you that makes it home is still carrying the weight of the version that never really left the office. It's in the health that keeps getting pushed to next quarter, the moments you're physically there, but mentally someone else. And it's in the version of yourself you keep promising is coming, the one who has the space to think rather than just react, who finishes a week knowing what actually moved forward, who feels like a CEO rather than the most overwhelmed person in the building. That version doesn't arrive on its own. And every month you spend waiting for it to show up is a month the gap between who you are and who the business needs you to be gets harder to close. One of my favorite quotes is your business's growth will never outgrow your inner growth, which is why every level of success requires a new level of you. And from working with first-time CEOs in 18 countries, I developed a five-step process called the Evolve method. This is the framework that I use with all of my private clients, and the focus is on upgrading how you think, lead, and operate. The work we do isn't about business or strategy. Instead, we put the focus on you and how you show up in everything that you do. And what I found repeatedly is that when we get the CEO performing at a higher level, the business naturally grows as a side effect of the work that we do. As for the Evolve method itself, the framework is broken down into 5 steps. The first thing we need to do is upgrade your identity. Because what made you a great founder or manager may be the very reason that you're the bottleneck as a CEO. And that's why the first thing we need to do is figure out who's the version of you who shows up powerfully, who makes the right decisions, who leads and empowers your team. Once we figure out who you need to become, then we can reverse engineer the journey, looking at the habits, the mindset, the way of operating, the behaviors that you need to embody and take on to really evolve into the next level version of yourself. The second thing we need to do is develop a CEO mindset that's grounded in a state of response. Because when you're running a company, it's so easy to spend your days stuck firefighting and dealing with reactive problems. As you've no doubt seen, though, when you're in that highly reactive state, there's no way you can make the right decisions or handle situations as the best version of yourself. That's why we need to do the mindset work that when something happens, rather than you reacting, you can stop, you can process, you can understand what's going on, and then choose how you respond to it. This is how you stay calm and grounded, regardless of the chaos going on around you. Then we need to shift our focus to your performance. We need to clearly define your role and responsibilities and where you should be spending your time. We can then start looking at how you effectively delegate, the way that you set expectations, the way you communicate your team and hold them accountable. We can look at how you structure your days and manage your time and really the habits and behaviors that you need to implement to get you performing at a higher level. The fourth thing we need to do is then get you out of your own head. We need to go through a process of self-belief rewiring to break through the mental blocks that cause you to overthink, to procrastinate, to avoid the things you know you need to do, and to second guess yourself. That's how we give you the confidence to really show up as the leader your business needs. And then finally, we need to implement what I call ideal life creation. This is figuring out what that life of freedom on your terms looks like and then building everything around that. Because if you're exhausted and running on fumes and your relationships are falling apart, all of that's going to affect your energy, focus, and productivity. So we need to get you feeling your best inside and out so that you can show up at the level your company actually requires. Where the real growth comes in, though, is when I'm working with private clients, I track the entire journey. Everything from how you handled that tough conversation to where you got thrown off your game to where your time got derailed. Then in our weekly sessions, we can take time to really break down what happened and figure out how you need to improve for the future. It's a lot like an elite athlete going back and watching old game footage. That's how they figure out how to improve and get an edge. And if you want to really become the leader your business needs, we have to treat it in exactly the same way. This is how we figure out your lag indicators, where you're getting in your own way, and the changes you need to make to really step up and lead at a higher level. These 5 steps aren't linear. They work together continuously as you grow and evolve, and they're built around your specific challenges and situations, not a generic framework applied to everyone in the same way. This is the same process CEOs in 18 countries have been through to become the leader that their business needs. And if you're hearing yourself in this video, then what I want to do is invite you to schedule a time to speak directly to me. We'll talk through your specific situation and see whether or not working together is going to be the right fit to help you get this under control. What I want to do now, though, is quickly show you some clips of CEOs who have been through the process so you can get a better understanding of where they are now and the results that they've achieved from working together. And once you've done that, you can schedule that time using the button below this video.
What I learned the hard way was that CEO is something that has to be earned and learned, especially if you haven't ever done it before, like me. And it's not just something that you continue to have because you're the one that started the business or you're the largest shareholder. And you can try to surround yourself with the right mentors or investors to help get you to the right place, people that have run big companies before. But what I found in being surrounded by a bunch of those folks is that even though I have them in my life, even though I consider some of them to be family, they are here for a lot of reasons in my life and not just for the act of getting me to be the most optimized and best CEO and best leader for my company that I can be. And my advice for most people starting a company, if not all, would be that you also really need someone in your corner for yourself, for your personal growth and development as a leader, as a human. in order to be the best and show up the best that you can for all the people that you employ, all of the investors that you're hoping to provide a return for, and all the consumers that you're serving, no matter what business it is that you start. And for me, finding Byron was is beyond a godsend, right? What Byron provides that I couldn't have even imagined when we started was a source of understanding, of accountability, of productivity, of reflection, and the thoughts and advice and remembrances around the cause and effect of every single action that you take, every thought that you have, every way that you plan, the ways that you show up to meetings. Um, it's things that are beyond my wildest imagination before I had someone like Byron in my life. And it has transformed me not only as a leader and the way that I show up for my employees, but as a person, the way I show up for my spouse, the way I show up for the dependents that I have, and everybody that I feel as though is responsible for me.
I reached out to Byron just right at 12 months ago, and honestly, was hesitant because I've thought, how can a guy in a different country that has no background in my industry really help me and really coach me, and what could I possibly learn from him? And I would say that going into last year, I felt very much like an imposter, very much like I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and unconfident and insecure about being the actual leader that I knew that my company needed, but just felt like I didn't deserve or shouldn't do that in a weird way. And now looking back on that 12 months later, the things that Byron's taught me and really just pulled out of me, and I'm going into this new year with very confident and very competent and very focused on my priorities. And gosh, I felt so overwhelmed before all the time. I felt so anxious all the time, and I feel, not that I don't have moments where I get overwhelmed, but I definitely recognize when I'm overwhelmed now, and I'm very much focused on my priorities, and I no longer am a people pleaser, and I no longer feel like a fraud. And it took a long time of work, but man, I can't say enough about Byron's work and what he does and who he is, and he's been there for me through some very difficult things I've dealt with this year. He's been right by my side, and he's changed my life. He's changed my business. He's changed everything.
When I first started working with Byron, I really didn't feel like I was where I wanted to be. I felt like things were out of control. I didn't know how to get my life of working 80 hours and struggling to spend enough time with my family. I was really trying to get all that back. And what I found in my work with Byron was that so much of what I didn't feel in control of, I had the ability to get control of by changing the way that I thought about things, the way I approached situations, how present I was, having a true vision for my future, having an action plan that really allowed me to recapture that control, get organized, come into my meetings and be with my family and anyone else in my life that I needed to really prioritize time for. Everything improved. I remember my wife told me just a couple weeks into working with Byron, she said, I completely noticed a difference. I felt more successful at work. Our projects started going better. We started being a lot more organized. We started to really, our campaigns and all the work we were doing started to really improve.
And I have to say, when I first met him, I was extremely overwhelmed. I felt like I was reacting to the fires and the issues that my business can have and present. I didn't feel like I was being the best leader I could be. I was good at what I was doing, but I wasn't the best I could be. And after working with Byron and him offering the tools and rewiring my mindset, I have now come back as a more confident leader. I have learned how to defend my schedule. I've learned how to be less reactive, but to also to be able to just pause and look at situations and come up with a better plan, a better solution. I've set new standards because of Byron. And so I would ask you, if you're in a position right now where you feel overwhelmed, you feel like there's just so much going on in your business and you need to just be able to be more efficient, to be more effective, there is no better solution than to have someone like Byron in your corner. He's going to be able to give you the tools that you need, the resources that you need, And really more importantly, just be there. He's always been a text message or a video call away. And having someone like that can really generate more revenue, but more importantly, help you just have a better mind. Because when you're in your prime, when you know how to work efficiently, it also spills over to everything else outside of the office, outside of the business, which is your family or the people that you're around. And they'll see that change in you as well.
All of these are examples of CEOs running scale-up companies. And at this point, I've supported people in industries of everything from tech to SaaS, AI, real estate, advertising, insurance, legal, global production firms, and unicorns in Silicon Valley. All of them different businesses in different countries and different stages, but with the same fundamental shift in how they operate, how they lead, and how they feel about the role that they're in. Every CEO you just heard was where you are right now. For many, they delayed reaching out for help for months, convincing themselves that it will eventually settle down or that they should be able to figure this out on their own. And that's exactly why they stayed stuck far longer than they needed to. Because the same thinking that built the business is now the thinking keeping them trapped inside it. But this isn't a business problem that you can think your way out of or that you can plan or strategize to get to the next level. It's not an issue that goes away on its own, which is why for all of these CEOs, they recognize that getting external help to get this under control wasn't a sign of weakness, instead it was a strength. And that's why I want to ask you something directly. If you've been watching this and recognizing yourself in it, not intellectually, but in that particularly uncomfortable way where something lands closer than you'd like, then what are you waiting for? Because in my experience, the answer to that question is almost always the exact same thing keeping the business stuck too. When you evolve as a CEO, though, you start spending your days in the things that actually matter. Your team stops waiting for your input and starts owning outcomes. You stop ending your weeks unsure of what moved forward, and you start showing up home, present, instead of physically there, but mentally still at the office. And the private experience of wondering whether you're actually doing this right starts to be replaced by something that feels more like confidence and less like performance. That's the work we do inside the Evolve CEO, where we upgrade how you think, lead, and operate so that you can perform at the level your business now demands. Now, this is generally for scale-up CEOs whose companies are doing 8 to 9 figures of revenue or who have raised 8+ figures of funding. CEOs who have already built something real but know they're still too involved, too reactive, and not operating at the level that the business now requires. So if you're still in the early stages, it's probably not the right time yet. But if you're at scale and you can feel what I've been describing in this video, it almost certainly is. So here's the next step. Below this video, you can book a call directly with me. We'll look at what's actually happening in your role in business, where the pattern is forming, and what would need to change for you to operate at the level that the business now needs. From there, we can see if working together is going to be the right fit, and if not, I'll point you in the right direction. Due to the high level of support in this program, I only work with a small number of CEOs at any one time. So if this is something that you want to explore, the right time to do this is now rather than when the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Because here's the honest truth. The longer the gap between who you are and who the business needs you to be stays open, the more expensive it becomes to close. Not just in business terms, in the time you spend in a version of this role that's costing you more than it should. You can set up a time to speak to me below because this gap doesn't close on its own. And if you've recognized yourself in this, leaving it longer is a choice.